Hi everyone, I hope everyone's doing well today. And in this series, what I'm going to be looking at is the different links between depression and suicide. So what I'm going to be doing, I've made quite a few videos where I've looked at debt and depression. I've also made videos where I've just talked about depression and suicide. So what I thought I'd do is I would make a series of videos where there is a link that is known. If people are suffering from these factors or these factors are in their lives, there's a likelihood that they will become depressed or suicidal. So the first one I'm going to talk about today, this is the first video, I'm probably going to do 5 or 6 with different themes, is relationship breakup. So the reason why this has a high risk of depression and sometimes suicide is because the person feels a major sense of loss. So if someone feels rejected, they might be the person who has been dumped in the relationship, or they might even be the one that has ended it. There is still that sense of loss. Now, for most people, they can have a relationship breakup, they can move on quite quickly, or they can take time, they can grieve for the loss, they can heal, and then they can move on and have a relationship. However, for a number of people, it's only rare that suicide, if you've not ever been depressed and then there's a relationship breakup, it's rare that someone would just commit suicide over that one event. However, you'd be really surprised, because the research I've been doing and also some of the videos I've seen and some of the books I've read, there are people, especially young people, are more susceptible to it, where it's just been one relationship breakup, but because that relationship meant everything to the person, then they've decided to take their own lives, or they've become really depressed, severe depression, where they've had to go onto medication or see their GP. So one of the reasons for it is because the person feels a sense of loss, so that's the first reason. The second reason is because people can then start to get negative feelings about themselves. So if you've been, if someone has ended a relationship with you, you can start to feel like you're a failure, that you are unlovable, that you can't keep a man or a woman, that it's all your fault. So if you start to go into those sense of feelings, and they all are quite negative thoughts and feelings, then the likelihood of you then becoming depressed from that is quite high. Now, I think there's a lot of people that feel that depression, you have to have, there has to be genetics linked to it, it has to run in the family, it has to be some sort of reason for it. But there are many people who can just become depressed and suicidal, and they've never had those thoughts and feelings before. Although the main reason people do tend to take their own lives or have suicidal thoughts is usually linked with severe depression, there are lots of people who also can just have one major event that triggers it, and then they can become depressed, go into a spiral, and then from that can lead to suicidal thoughts. So the key is, with all of these videos I'm going to be doing, these are all factors contributing to suicide and depression. If you know someone who's been through more than one of these factors in their lives or life events, then it's about looking out for those people and just checking in with them to see if they're okay. So the third reason why a relationship breakup can lead to depression is because you feel like your world isn't going to be the same. So the highest figures when it comes to suicidal thoughts, suicide and depression is usually with young people, because when you're young and you put your whole world into the relationship, then when it ends, it can feel like your whole world has ended, because you then don't have anything more to focus on. Now, young people, a lot of times, I'm not saying all, because they'll put their all into the relationship, and because they'll, probably hang out with that person all the time, it could be their first love, it's going to be a major loss for them, and they don't always know how to cope. They don't have the coping strategies or the mechanisms. So when I've been reading these stories, especially online, there's usually 15 or 16 or 17-year-olds who have had this really long and intense relationship with someone, and when it ends, they feel like their life is over, and they have just, chose to take their own lives over this one relationship. And I think the key thing to remember with all of these things is that anytime someone feels suicidal, especially, it's an irrational thought, because your thoughts are that whatever's happening in your life or whatever the event is, there is no other option. And I'm going to be making another video not only on suicide awareness but and prevention, but also a title called Suicide is Not the Only Option, where we look at other alternatives, because that's the key thing. In that moment, people feel irrational. They feel that the only option is that they're in a lot of pain now and it's never going to get any better, that there's no future. And usually for me, I'll always say to people in that situation, how about giving it 24 hours? How about giving it the next hour to see if you feel the same? Because no one knows how you're going to feel from one moment to the next. But even when you're depressed, you may feel that the depression isn't going to lift. However, that doesn't mean there's no alternatives. So there's the fourth and final feeling with people who have been in relationship breakups, why they usually become depressed or suicidal. Well, not everyone, but some people, is the fear of not meeting anyone else and the loss of trust in others. So when you have to trust someone in the world, you know, that gives you a sense of belonging. It also gives you a sense of security. If you've been dumped in a relationship and you've also got the propensity for depression anyway, you can feel as though that's it. I'm not going to meet anyone else. I can't trust anyone. What's the point in being alive? What's the point in me doing anything? What's the point in me interacting with others? And it can be this cycle. And the thing with depression is a cycle where your negative thoughts take over and you can't reason with them. And every time you're trying to reason and throw a counter argument in, the negative thoughts are taking over and they're putting another argument in there. So for people who have got that fear of not meeting anyone else, and then they'll use isolation, so they won't want to interact with anyone else, it can lead you down that path of depression. So the key things for you to do if you're in this situation is to put things in perspective. Think about it in the whole context. And this is what I say with anyone that's struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts. Think about the big picture. Think about what's happening right now, how things might change in the next hour, the next day, the next week, the next month. Also, long term, is this relationship, just because it's ended, does this mean it's the end of my world? Do I have any other positive things in my life at the moment? What are the chances or the likelihood of me meeting someone else? What are the chances of me being happy without this person in my life eventually? So you're saying to your brain that it is possible. So always use words like, is it possible for me to be happy again? Is there a likelihood that I will move forward from this relationship? Is there a chance in the future that I won't feel like this? If you ask yourself those questions, it leaves the door open for you to, you know, be rational. Whereas if you say, that's it, this person meant everything to me, now it's over with, I don't want to live anymore, I'm never going to meet anyone, I'm never going to trust anyone, so I might as well end it all. You're kind of talking yourself into it, into those thoughts. The second thing to do is to recognise the positives. The positives can be found in any situation. So if a relationship has ended, think of it this way, something must have been wrong. But if the relationship was perfect or fine, then nothing would have ended. You wouldn't have ended things, or they wouldn't have. So you can look at it in that way. Something wasn't working between us. It's now ended. So it gives me a bit of freedom. Now I have the freedom to find a relationship that will work. Now I have the freedom to work on myself. Now I have the freedom to be not in that relationship that wasn't working. So look for the positives. And the final thing is to have faith in yourself and in meeting someone else. If you believe in yourself and you've done the work on you, then you'll know that there are billions and millions of people in the world. So if you just focus on saying, this was my one person and there's no one else out there for me, then if you look at that realistically, I know that sometimes when people have negative thoughts or they're depressed, that's the whole point. The stuff that you're thinking is not necessarily rational, but also it's not necessarily true, accurate or realistic. Because the likelihood, I mean, I've never in my life ever said, I believe in one soulmate and that's it. If that was the case, then if you're in a bad relationship, then for some people, they will stay in that relationship because they'll say, this is my one person, this is Mr. Right, Mrs. Right. There's always lots of different people that you can meet eventually that you can click and connect with. So you have to have faith in yourself that you're a good person and there's a likelihood of that happening, but also that the chances are high for you to meet someone else. So there's no point in making a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling. So that's all I want to say on this one. This is video 1. As I've said, I'm going to be making more videos on this topic, factors contributing to suicide and depression, and we're going to look at different factors. And please feel free to leave your comments, feel free to let me know what you think, share this if you think it will be of benefit to anyone, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, bye.